Get Warrior Tough. Mental Training 101 with Andrew Wittman and Dutch Coleman. And now back to Andrew and Dutch.
All right, we're back. Andrew and Dutch. Dutch and Andrew. Hashtag Get Warrior Tough. Dutch is at the Dutch Coleman on the Twitter. I'm at Warrior Tough PhD. Go to getwarriortough.com. All right, Dutch, before the break, we were talking about fact and truth, and you were at an event, and you were going to tell us a story about this event.
Yeah, so I'm talking to this mother and son, and so I was taking them down a path of fact and truth, and because a lot of people they think communication is fine on the levels that we typically deal with. You know, have that document to me by lunchtime tomorrow, and you don't think anything of it until you start really pointing them towards all the different things that could go wrong with that. Hey, can you have that for me by at lunchtime on Friday? Well, what time's lunchtime?
Well, I don't eat lunch, so you ain't getting it.
Yeah, I don't eat lunch. Right, I eat a late lunch. Well, I eat what does that mean? And so even if you go the typical lunch, 12 o'clock, right? Does that mean 12:05 it's late because you have something to do at 12:30? So when you told me lunchtime, you expected me to do it at 12 because you had something you had to do at 12:30 with that information? You saw all the different things. So every time I talk to someone about that, then they give me the, oh, okay, I see what you mean. So this is a huge problem. Fact and truth is a huge problem that is very easily solved once you take them down that fact and truth path. Because once you begin to speak in fact and not truths, I mean, speaking in truth has its benefits, especially when you're trying to be a people whisperer. And we talk about that in our training. But on a very basic level, the more precise you are with your information, the better it is for everyone. I need that Friday at 12:30. And this is, and also going as far as exactly what this is, what this is that I need. And so when you take people down that path, even a few moments that it takes, I mean, it can change their life. It could change their business life. It could change their relationships. It could change their, and I mean both professional and private, personal relationships. It could change everything. So that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we teach. So when we say this is life-changing stuff, you know, people walk away and they're like, man, I never thought about that. And you'd be surprised that there are large portions of the population that has never thought about some of the things that seem very simple to you and I. That's why I know we're having an impact out there. People's lives are being changed, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, that one example.
Yeah, and I love that, dude. And that's why you and I, like, that's probably, like, if you could get one thing from our stuff, that the difference in fact and truth probably help you more than any one thing that you could start to practically apply immediately coming out of one of our sessions.
And it's amazing that how energetic and how enthusiastic people are about applying it the moment they leave. They can't wait. I mean, they can't wait to start putting this stuff into effect. And that's beautiful because we know in typical training situations, you're just ready for it to begin and ready for it to be over. And those are the two things that you're ready for. Hurry up and get this started so I can leave. And we have people that are chomping at the bit to leave so they can apply some of the stuff. Yeah, that's the reason they're looking for.
Right. All right. So now here's another finding that this guy had out in City University of London was that we alter our memories to conform to the beliefs or the views of those that we are with. So what happens is that if you're with a certain crowd, you'll remember things a certain way in order to conform with their beliefs or views. If you're with a different crowd with a different influence, you'll remember things in a different way that will conform to their beliefs and views. So we know the memory is a reconstruct, right? And now there's external influence on our memory based on who we're hanging out with.
Now, we're not talking about when you guys are out there just not telling the truth. We're not talking about that. We're talking about function in the brain, the function in the brain where the reconstruct happens that way, and you're like subconsciously doing it. So you're not planning on doing it again. We're not talking about you guys are out there telling things that are simply not true.
Right.
But your brain is going to reconstruct the situation in a manner that is going to be more conducive with who you're around, who you're communicating with, the environment around you, the external factors, as Andrew said. So this is naturally occurring, but I wonder how many of us, Andrew, actually catch ourselves doing that from situation to situation.
Well, I will tell you that I, as a people whisperer, right, and that's our after CEO view, I've got myself, I know my internal identity. My mind is running the boardroom, although I deploy my emotions in my body. They're at my command, right? They're on what we call on demand. I do, I'll say, self-censor depending on who I'm with. Just to give you an example, and this isn't just about memories; it's about everything. But it definitely, I would not recall a memory that would offend somebody that I'm with. And if they did bring it up, I'm going to try and present it in a way that smooths over any kind of emotional reaction.
Absolutely, and that's where this knowledge and this information becomes powerful, because you're able to use it to your advantage. And I don't mean to take advantage.
No, right.
I mean to build relationships, to communicate more effectively.
Yeah, now I'll give you an example. I'll just give you an example. I don't mean to cut you off, but this is fresh on my mind. I don't want to lose it, man. So for the benefit of a relationship. Now, my dad, my dad's a missionary. My mom and dad are missionaries. They're old school. My dad's almost 90. Right, and he likes the old, like if you were driving in the car with him, he likes the old, like the Billy Graham, George Beverly Shea kind of music from that, like that. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of music that we listen to. Now, I ain't got no problem rocking out some AC/DC, because that's what we're on our convoy. You plunk in, an AC/DC Shoot to Thrill or whatever, right? And we're rocking down the convoy, and we're, I like listening to that. I wouldn't turn it on in the car with my dad, though. I'll actually either turn it off and have a conversation with him. But if we're going to play music, I'm going to find the George Beverly Shea channel for the sake of the relationship.
Right.
So and I would do the same thing with memories. If we're, I'm not going to bring up a memory of like a time where it wasn't a good time, where my dad was, beating it out of me, like we talk about the 2-year-olds, right? If we do, I'm saying it in a funny way. Like the memory will be hilarious by the time I'm done repainting the picture. It won't be the high drama that it was the day that it happened. Are you following what I'm saying here?
Absolutely, and it's not deception. It's more a way to effectively communicate, a way to bridge, to connect with people. So it's not any type of deceiving going on, so to speak. Like you said, you're bridging, you're connecting with people, and it's unnecessary for the alternative to happen.
Right. So, but understand, this is happening. The consciousness is contagious, Dutch. You and I talk about this. In fact, we got that week in the Phalanx is coming up for our basic group. It's week 11 coming up, and we talk about consciousness being contagious on that week, and who you're hanging out with, and the associations that you have, and how it rubs off. And your mom told you this. Your mom told you this when you were growing up. She didn't want you hanging out with certain people because birds of a feather do what, Dutch?
Flock together.
Right, and she was right about that. So, if you're around a bunch of naysayers, you're automatically, after being in that pool surrounded by naysayers, you're going to begin to take a negative approach to things. If you're around positive and upbeat people, you're going to become positive and upbeat. If you're around critical thinkers, like we actually have a thought process. If you hang out with Dutch and I, you're going to become more of a critical thinker, just in order to communicate and with us and be around us in our space. It's going to happen automatically. This happens to your memories. So if you hang out with people, let's say that they don't, that they believe that, those rich people are bad and evil and we shouldn't have anything, and, it's, good to be poor, and it's holy to be poor and suffer, and we shouldn't have anything materialistically. You're not gonna recall any great times that you had on that big speedboat when you were a kid. When you went with your rich friend. Absolutely,
and it's counterproductive. I mean, you're talking about pointing your 1 to 26 towards where it needs to be. That's an extension of that, where you're hurting yourself. It's just not necessary.
Yeah. Okay. So now, here's the next thing. This is like a gut shot right here. Okay. We change our memories to reflect updated information. And of course, I got a study to back this up, right? So, because we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, we'll use this study. So, they did this study in 2011 out of Harvard, right? That people sometimes fictionalize their memories to protect themselves from recalling experiences that threaten their belief about themselves. College students who opposed a tuition increase but wrote a persuasive essay supporting the idea as part of an experiment later misremembered their initial attitudes. They said they supported the increase all along.
That's beautiful. You know why I love that? Because that will be my solution to some folk that are whining about something that's irrelevant. I'm going to tell them to write something supporting the opposite, so then their brains will click on to that, and then we can let it go and we can move on to the next thing.
Well,
give me a 2-paragraph page to support this, and then they'll say that, and then
then they're like, oh wait, well, and that's because the way the human machine it hates cognitive dissonance, right? So that would be it's cognitive dissonance. So what we do is we have to remember, misremember, reconstruct the memory so that we're congruent. Now, you and I use this as a technique when we're doing consulting with high-level executives. You and I do the technique as well. What we do if there's a disagreement, you and I, we do what we call organized disagreement, where each of us will argue the other's point of view. And then what happens is once I start arguing your point of view, and you have to argue it like I'm you. I have to like be in your shoes. It's empathetic arguing, right? So I'm going to argue your point. Right. So I see it how you see it. I feel how you feel. That's all. My stuff doesn't matter. What I'm trying to do is argue the point from your point of view. What happens is I begin to get emotionally attached and invested into your point of view, and suddenly mine ain't like that important anymore. And now just what happened right here is I start to change my memory, and then pretty soon I'm like, yeah, I always thought like Dutch thought. What are you talking about? I'm always on board with that.
Right. And if anything, it's going to bring you more towards the middle where you need to be, because we all have our truths, and a lot of times we run into people whose truths are on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So when you do participate in activity like that, and you do it honestly, and you do have true empathy, you have no other choice but to drift towards that middle, because you start feeling and you start understanding the other point of view, and that's nothing but progress. That's nothing but good. Again, it doesn't mean you're going to flip in every situation, but the very least that's going to happen is you're going to go towards that middle, and you're going to have more empathy towards the other point of view.
And this thing about it's also it's part of confirmation bias, where you know how they say hindsight is always 20/20.
Right.
And I see this I see this a lot in the people like, yeah, I said it back then, I was always right. Like when you do your sports picks, you make your predictions and you try to act like you picked them all along.
Yep, I've never missed one yet.
See, so you remember based on new information. When information it's so easy in the sports because we can laugh about it. But I see it happen in these political races. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we just try to take credit for that.
30 seconds.
And the funniest thing is when someone actually recalls it and they still don't remember it. They can show them data. And here's an audio tape
show me
saying this.
Yeah, no, Cliffhanger was out after your son was born. I don't care. Don't confuse me with the facts. You're listening to the Get Warrior Tough radio show. We'll be right back after this.